Welcome, everyone. Thank you, those locally here at the former Wellspring Institute, now the 7 Point Ranch. And actually, I think they still have the spa downstairs, so it's a wonderful place to come for rejuvenation and for sharing. And thank all of you who are on the internet now watching this live through the Heart Center website. So Christopher Rudy has asked me to interview him, and we're kind of doing the opposite of what has happened this past few years, where he has interviewed me a number of times. And I just would like to tell you that when I was 15, I worked at a health food store near Chicago, and that was my introduction into natural foods and natural healing. And, of course, since that time, I've been very involved in and interested in all things health, natural health-wise. So Christopher has a vision that I think is worthy of sharing, and we'd like to hear about that now. So Chris, you have, in the last 33 years or so, been involved in actually introducing and coordinating and founding some, 4 holistic health centers. Can you tell us how that happened and a little bit about your vision for the future?
My background is actually, my training was in architectural engineering at Ohio State University, and I had gone on to work on a project in Dayton, Ohio, one of my first projects, with a health food store. And I put in, they wanted a whole mezzanine area on the second floor area to be developed, so I designed it to the square inch where people could walk through and get the natural foods. It was kind of actually like a Subway concept they have today. And after that, there was a building available in Troy, Ohio, which is my home, and went ahead and purchased it with a Small Business Administration loan, a 3-story building downtown Troy, and I had the vision of a co-op, a store that was both, retail for the public and wholesale for members. And remember, this was meat and potatoes, Ohio, middle America, back in the early 70s. This wasn't East Coast or West Coast. So I knew it had to be really something special. So I put my heart and soul into it, where I created a natural food store and eatery, had a spiritual interest bookstore on the second floor, and hundreds of books with a bookstore on the second floor. And the third floor, there was a spiritual interest center where actually there was people did the spiritual. I had services there, and there was actually Cinemaster teachings, and they had different people that come from around the state and were working there, and so it was it won a City Beautification Award because the colors, the sounds, the music, and everything. It was just a beautiful place because I knew if you didn't have a place that people could come in and smell of it, eat of it, 5 senses, to where the sounds and everything would be attractive. Kind of the Four Winds Cafe model that Mark Prophet had in Colorado, and so it worked. It worked to a certain extent. I passed the torch to some other people because I was moving on in a doctor's office with 3 doctors. That was my second one, and I got moved on from being an herbalist and a Whole Foods, nutritionist and working with supplements to becoming training as a clinical nutritionist and working with iridology and, Bernard Jensen and the camera that you could photograph the eye. And back then, the 386 computers were coming out, and you could have a clinical nutritional diagnostic program to where people could fill out the questionnaire, and it did a very comprehensive nutritional deficiency analysis that you could relate then to, once the slides were projected from taking the picture with the iridology camera, I'd project them on the wall in a dark room, and people could look themselves in the eye, and I could point out where the separation of tissue was, where there's a degeneration, and how that corresponded to the nutritional deficiency analysis that talked about the area of the body where these deficiencies would affect. And so it's like the law of correspondence. It became very self-evident to me that it's all connected. And working with the doctors there who didn't know what holistic health was either, I was kind of the holistic health pioneer within their clinic, and they were mostly chiropractors. And I learned a lot about, the pluses and minuses of chiropractic versus other modalities. And I read a lot of chiropractic journals while I was there, and where that was evolving to mixing with nutrition, but being straight chiropractic, and the integration was beginning to go on in that modality back in the 70s, and this was the early 80s then. Then I was working with the doctors, and moved out to Montana, and I worked with essential oils too, and reflexology, and I was a colonic therapist back in Ohio, as well as working with the nutritional analysis and the iridology. But when I moved out to Montana, I developed a holistic health center based on a breakthrough technology. This was 1991. And the clinic I had up in Livingston, it was with this equipment. It was the first 386 computer that had a biofeedback interface on it, and it had the first, what was called the periodic table of quantum biology. And so that with the biofeedback, it actually could wire people up, their foreheads, their ankles and wrists, and it would test the galvanic skin responses, as well as volts and amps would be cycled from the biofeedback interface. And it had about 5,500 homeopathics, nutritionals, vitamins, minerals, aminos in racks that had wires around them, so that the energetics could be cycled into the etheric sheath of the body, and the biofeedback would register that, and it would be filtered through this periodic table of quantum biology. And this was the guy that developed the original heart-lung machine, or perfected it. And he'd gone on to develop the first heart bypass surgery at Johns Hopkins University. And
now this wasn't Bill Nelson, was it?
No. But Bill Nelson had this equipment.
Right.
But the interface, the concept of that, the periodic table of quantum biology, it was Dr. Isaacs at Johns Hopkins University, and he was a medical pioneer. He developed the original heart bypass surgery that became, mainstream with just in a few years, and he wrote an article in the New England Medical Journal about how 85% of it was being abused because of insurance, and they got rid of him at Johns Hopkins University. So this Dr. Isaacs went through the dark night of the soul. He was really, and that's when he developed this periodic table. You have the periodic table of chemistry. Then he developed this periodic table of quantum biology, which is the energetics of all the organ systems of the body, and how they, there's actually frequency coordinates that Bill Nelson was able to digitize as a filter, so that the biofeedback, as it cycled the homeopathics, the vitamins, the minerals, aminos, and all these different that were wired up in racks that would go into the etheric sheath of the body, then it would filter it. So he was able, with a team of programmers, develop little stick figures for your endocrine system, your digestive systems, and the different systems of the body.
So I'm going to interrupt you here. So a lot of this is preliminary to what's going to happen after our interview with Dr. Kathy Forte, who's here, because she's developed a device
that's right. That's gone beyond,
really gone into quantum and gone into a new dimension, and it's awesome. So if you're not familiar with all of this, it's preliminary to what we're going to hear about later. So tell us, what is your vision through all of the growth that you've had in terms of your understanding of health, nutrition, the science of healing? Where has this led you to now with your Cosmic Love program, to your vision for Global TeLeCare? Where is it leading, and how are you getting there?
Well, the experience I had with Dr. Nelson was rather, really shocking, because it succeeded to the point where there was local medical doctors who had clients coming to me and going back to them and saying, this is the future of medicine. And they didn't like that. You can't get a medical degree in quantum medicine. The doctors aren't going to go back to medical school to learn it, And I got a lot of grief, to say the least. And matter of fact, it was a matter of I was going to save my family at that time, and my wife was having pretty much fits with people coming to her because she had an older brother that was a medical doctor and an older sister that were medical doctors, and she was hearing a lot about me being a quack.
You're just 40 years ahead of your time.
And it was kind of a culture shock. Yeah. And there was a lot of good with it, and it was like pioneering. But the pioneers, and I have Aries in orbit in my astrology, have the arrows in their back, and I had enough arrows in my back that I backed off of it, and I really got into the reason I came out here and was able to come out here was because I had gone to Sweden and I found out about this Swedish pollen extract, which is, and I got the rights to the North American market, and I was brokering to major medical nutrition companies and health food stores and other markets, and so I focused on that, and it was, it paid the bills. And now medical doctors are using that worldwide in drip IVs for immunotherapy after they wipe out your immune system with chemo and radiation, But if you're on insurance, they want to keep you alive a little longer, so it's understandable they'd give you something really good before you died.
Okay, so with all of this understanding, where is it leading? Where are you trying to lead the consciousness of people health-wise? And tell us about the people on your technology team, what your vision is, and how you see that happening.
Well, the technology team, and that's really the critical aspect of it. I wouldn't even be talking about this today if I wasn't working through and with some individuals the last several years that were really on the cutting edge of the technology. And it's a new system, it's called informatics, with information management systems, database management, and other systems for basically organizing information in formation. So you can get, pattern recognition. You can get the picture, get the pattern of a massive amount of information, like I was talking about for your individual metabolic type, which is your blood type, which is a massive amount of information right there. And the medical system isn't based on it because they want kind of lowest common denominator, one drug fits all. They don't want to individualize because then it gets into, they have to do research to validate that, and the more research they do with the drugs, the more they find out that there's no efficacy with medical drugs at all, virtually. So they really don't want to go there. And so this is where it's going, though, and it's kind of hit the wall because in the more information that you have, the greater is the need to get it all in order. And the new technology with its breakthroughs is really, and one of the technology teams I'm working with, and I can't mention any names. I've agreed not to mention any names with these individuals until we get the first stage with the funding. Naturally, they don't want me to use their name to get the funding, but I can't tell you about them. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because both the technology teams, these individuals came here from this local area, and some of you, when I talk about them, will know who I'm talking about. Some of you will know who I'm referring to. And I'll give you a little background on them. But the one company is called Golden Helix over in the technology park over in Bozeman. And it's the largest company in the world that develops software for genomics research, for the Genome Project and the Genome Research, which is the huge thing in universities all over the world right now. Because they're doing all kinds of, matter of fact, the technology of the year, this last year was the genomics technology, and the name of it escapes me, but it's the ability to edit genes. That was in the news this last year. That was the big science breakthrough of the year. And it's happening so fast that, of course, the scary dimensions of that, you always hear about it in the media, but the positive dimensions as far as really curing all kinds of diseases, it's happening very quickly. And the one individual, I've worked with him for years, he's actually been the team leader of the programmers at this company, at Golden Helix. And what they do, with the genome, when they're doing research, they're talking about massive amounts of information. The genome in the human body, there's so much information, and they've developed ways that this.
So for those not familiar with that, genomes has to do with the genes, chromosomes, the DNA,
blueprint of the body,
the blueprint. So a lot of medical establishment today thinks that disease, we have diseases prone based on ancestry, based on DNA and all that. However,
epigenetics, they now know that epigenetics, the spiritually, mentally, and emotionally affects the genetics of the body. It's called the science of epigenetics. So it's all bringing us back to the holistic understanding of healing, health, and healing. And so this company has the resources to process the amount of data with holistic healing that it could, with the website, you could go into an area of the database that's that's your blood type, your metabolic type. So all the people in the world that have your blood type, metabolic type, there could be massive amounts of information there that you could access through putting in your current symptom profile. Another gateway of people that have similar symptom profile, and what was indicated from research and from empirical data, people sharing results back, what's working best for your current symptom profile. So it's like a vision of owning your own health and self-determination with self-care, where people could have access to information to see how, basically, in a very self-evident way, that if the most likely good results if they did like a combination of homeopathic, naturopathic, chiropractic, and it's going to validate technologies like the Trinfinity 8. In other words, the efficacy of that as a standalone or in combination with homeopathic, naturopathic, or even whatever combination. The more people that are using the database and sharing results back, and there's the reward system model, that if you share your results with different reporting protocols for 3 days or 3 weeks, if you do that, then you get free access to the empirical database. Otherwise, you have to pay for it. But if
you have a tie-in to this
epigenetics, which is
through this individual, and you mentioned another one. Then it's also
the other individual. This individual, the first individual I was going to mention, went through Thomas More School. He went through Thomas More School, and he got a scholarship at Loomis Chaffee, one of the top 10 East Coast prep schools, because they had a headhunter out here looking for some shepherd boy to balance out the 5th generation blue bloods. And he did really well there. Matter of fact, when he graduated, because they had such big endowments from, they had a computer, like a multi-million-dollar computer lab. He was speaking 18 computer languages, or writing them. He knew them when he graduated, and he got a 4-year paid presidential scholarship over at MSU. And he graduated in the top. There was 33. That's a special honors program. The top of MSU after 4 years being paid for in a presidential scholarship.
Okay, so that's the Golden Helix guy.
That's the Golden Helix guy, and then he got his master's down in Utah. But by that time, he was leading the programming team at Golden Helix. So when he got his master's, Google offered him a great job in the company. Golden Helix said, don't leave. You're running. We need you. And they gave him the fraction of the action ownership in the company, and he's got a critical role in continuing to work with a team of programmers. But he was the one that developed this new software used for genomics that will be able to window in, uniquely way it windows in to specific data points that are unique to your blood type, metabolic type, and so this is all possible.
Great as long as it's user friendly for the individual, not just for the government. Right?
That's the idea.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it has to be user friendly because this individual that I'm talking about, he speaks to like 500 PhDs at Stanford or MIT in Boston area. To people that are working in the universities from all over that come into the convention. He'll speak to as many as several times now, as many as 500 PhDs at a time. So he really knows this stuff. They've got a technical team. This amount of information processing is what would be required,
right,
with the data that's out there. So that's the one individual, and the other individual, he went through Thomas More also. And he went down to Arizona State University, and he kind of did a Bill Gates. He started up his own company, software company, which was a computer interface between professors and students, with like a handhelds. Then he had a whole team, and he had the technology director of Arizona State on the.
Where this is leading is you've got the technical skills to put together your vision, for Global TeLeCare.
Global TeLeCare. And so to have a good model vision documentary,
right,
like a half hour that's really done professionally, and that like a YouTube, that people could watch that and just really have a very clear vision, far better than this little trailer, and be able to see the technology, how it works, and who the team is, who specifically, and how the other individual, how he developed this way with the handheld smartphones, and he has 5 of them. The company he works with is called eCollege, and they have like 60,000 employees worldwide, and they do the software interface between professors and students with smartphones and tablets. And the biggest growth in third world countries, and this individual I was referring to, he's been in all over Africa, because they'll have whole villages where they'll have a server and a satellite, and all the kids have little tablets, and all their books and everything are on these tablets. So this other individual, he gave the presentation at the International Mobile Conference, which the smartphone is the big growth of in the third world countries and all over the world. He gave the presentation in Germany and Munich this last December regarding the mobile for eCollege. He gave the presentation for the mobile conference worldwide.
So you may see in the future people walking around as they do now with mobile phones or with smartphones,
tablets,
with the downloaded information, all the health information they require.
That's right.
Based on their symptoms or what they're going through. And then through Global TeLeCare, they're going to be able to access protocols, information that will help them for self-healing, self-care.
Exactly. You'll be able to have like an application on a smartphone that's all keyed in. Once the application you're registered in, to just be able to hit a few buttons and put in some symptom profiles or some and immediately get information that that you have choices, with options.
So it's some of us feel that maybe Obamacare is disempowering because we don't always we're not able to choose our physician anymore, or the HMOs are in charge. This is probably, from your vision, putting power back with the individual, right? In some case.
The idea of that is that owning your own life, your health, your own business. The best government, self-government. The best education, self-education. The best healthcare is self-care. And I really like the quote from Buckminster Fuller that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Now, I'm not saying this would make Obamacare obsolete overnight, but give it a few years. By God's grace. When I say that, corporate medicine is because Obamacare, there's all the insurance companies and the corporatocracy is the middlemen that make it so much more expensive. And then, and this is the interesting thing, according to Medicare statistics, there's 15,000 people every month that are dying because of doctor mistakes. Mm-hmm. And these are actually a video that I have recently on a healthcare blog about this. So the system as it is, it's the number 3, at least, conservatively, number 3 cause of death in America is doctors. And the system is Obamacare as it is now. There's just the corporations. They're making a killing as middlemen. Getting a fraction of the action. But the main thing, the problem is, you'll be insured then to be taken care of, and you got a good chance that the care is going to kill you. So this is the concern. There's got to be a better way.
Well, many of us grew up watching Star Trek, where you'd have the tricorders, who could communicate to a planet and back to the ship or on the planet, and also the Bones device, where he'd scan the body and then be able to put frequencies out. So do you see this device you're talking about?
The technology is actually, I've talked to a guy 15 years ago, and he says he saw the tricorder, and he'd worked, the guy that pioneered that original quantum device I was talking about. He's gone way past. He had to leave the country. The feds were right after him, and he actually sells his equipment in cruise ships in international waters around the. But he kind of went to Hungary, and he kind of went to, and that's another story. He kind of went to the dark side.
But his device still works. And I have to say, and talking a little bit with Kathy, who's going to be talking with us later, and sharing her amazing story. There's similarities in terms of the higher quantum leap in consciousness that's embedded within the technology that she's developed, and that I think that you're trying to bring forth through what you're doing.
Right? And most of what I'm talking about is just well-informed choice.
Right.
with the data that's out there and what's likely to work best.
Right.
What Kathy's talking about is really, as far as the etheric blueprint of health in the body and the harmonic set points of what health really is, and the understanding of the fractal order of the holographic universe in quantum science, this cutting edge state of the arts of that, she's like finessed it in her understanding and what she's developed, to the next level. Right. This is this to me where I really believe where it's going, and it will be validated by a system like I'm talking about, where people will choose different modalities, including the Trinfinity 8, and the results that they get will go back, and so people can see as a standalone device by itself, or with other modalities combined with a synergy or symbiosis, it's called. They'll be able to see how well that works.
Do you think we have time for just a couple questions from the audience here?
Sure.
Before we move on to
how are we doing on time?
Kathy's presentation.
We're just at we're at 3:30.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear from somebody out there, either locally or online, if you have a question for Chris that he can answer regarding this whole matrix. Go ahead, and I'll repeat your question.
Will it include mental therapy and chakra therapies?
A gal's asking if it will include mental therapy and chakra therapy as well.
I think that's a really good point. And that the psychological, is right next to the what I call the higher mental, the mental, the emotional, and physical, but the higher mental, the etheric, spiritual. You are what you believe, you become what you believed. You are what you think mentally, you become what you thought. You are what you feel, you became what you felt. And you are what you do, you become what you did. So that there's this whole, from the top down, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So that's a matter of fact, I did a graphic of that in this article, for this Natural Life News Directory. That circle, it's got the spiritually, mentally, emotional, physical. And I tried to color coordinate the concepts with the mental part of it is just as important as the emotional and the physical. And I personally, I think the spiritual, what you believe about, and in quantum science, they say that your concept of a thing and what you believe about it actually sets the matrix for fulfilling that reality. There's no separation in the quantum field, in the continuum. There is no time or space, and what you believe actually really creates or opens a portal for manifesting that reality. And so, and again, the mental aspect of that is like it follows from the belief, and it's just as important from that level, and the emotional and the physical all follows from that. So that'll all be, a matter of fact, there's a very interesting profile of self-mastery that anyone can do when they enter this website originally. They'll do it's a self-assessment profile, and they'll be able to go through a questionnaire in these 4 quadrants, spiritual, mentally, emotional, and physical, and put it together in a way they can see where their developed and undeveloped areas are. It's no strengths or weaknesses. It's just developed and undeveloped areas. And that understanding will give the ability to, from that perspective, become conscious of how you're not conscious. In other words, we just don't know what we don't know. But as you become more conscious of how you're conscious, with self-assessment profiles and other tools like that, it really then, once you become conscious of that which was unconscious, not only do you will to control, you can't resist self-control. It's like biofeedback is that principle. This is what they found out with once people found out with biofeedback that they could monitor that which was on autonomic body processes that were unconscious. Once they found out that they could become conscious of that, they developed
protocols for influencing it.
And for self-control, where before it was unconscious, and self-mastery.
And also to your point, ma'am, for those local, on Saturday mornings, like this morning, Jacobus Hollowan on his radio program for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Once a month at least has been talking about mental health issues. And he's given out a lot of great information from local therapists and health professionals. So we had another question, sir, right here.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. Just, I get, everything's evolving, I really get that. Just something occurred to me. Some of us get in the self-healing, and maybe I've got 4 or 5 modalities that I'm going to be using to treat whatever. I'm just wondering, practitioners per se, you're still going to have, for example, you as a practitioner might be a facilitator or whatever you want to call it. You mightn't be a chiropractor anymore, but you might be something that pulls it together. But
good point.
Are we going to need a bit, because some people are going to freak out. They won't have the confidence, so they're going to need a bit of help.
So a gentleman's asking, for those on the broadcast, there's a number of modalities, and people require guidance because if you're doing a lot of this on your own, and you don't have the person there physically, the professional to consult with, will people freak out? How is this dynamic going to play out in their self-care?
That's a really good question. I've been working on this for a decade, and this is my 4th holistic health center. Actually, it's called Ultramedic Services, and it's a website, ultramedics.com, ultramedservices.com. The whole concept of, in the future, I really believe there will be a modality that any medical doctor, healthcare professional, can get registered and certified in. And it's really the use of this information to guide a client, and I call them clients, not patients. That someone will come to the doctor, chiropractor, homeopath, whatever. They will be certified in the use as an Ultramedics practitioner. They will be able to guide the client through their questions and how to use this database. And the person may come to this chiropractor because they trust they've worked with, or it could be an allopathic doctor, a drug-based doctor. It could be any, but they're certified in a process where they're not going to be told what to do. They're not going to be prescribed. They're going to be guided through choices that respects not just their free will choice, but their unique health profile, symptom profile, metabolic type, blood type, and then guides them through that. They can say, they might be able to say, well, this indicates this, this, and this, and getting these results. This modality combined with this modality seems to be getting better results. I don't know. Personally, what I would do is this, but it's your call. It's your choice.
Do you think the medical establishment, the pharmaceuticals, will try to snuff out this whole thing because?
Oh, there's definitely. You'll know when you're over the target, you get a lot of flack sometimes, and there will be some backlash from this. But again, we're at the stage right now, globally, that the more backlash and disinformation, and it's like. There's 3 stages before something accepted. First they ignore you, then they fight you, and then you win. This is Gandhi said.
And they join you.
And then they join you.
Yeah, okay.
And they join you.
Okay, we had another question back here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wandering through MT France one day, and I came to a place where they were selling olives. And I looked over the assortments, and the guy says, try before you buy. Now I want to know how an individual like myself, who is not educated in medical things, how do you come into the system that you're describing? How do you find out what it is that you're buying, and who's going to give you the help?
So gentlemen, for those online, he was in Europe and went to an olive grove or some place where they're selling olives. Try before you buy. So he's saying, how are you going to know with this system what you're getting and how it's going to help you out, and how do you know that it works?
Well, that's the idea of creating a self-care website that you can access, go through different gateways, and each gateway you can learn more about yourself. For example, the first one, if you don't know your blood type, there's questionnaires that'll actually discern what your metabolic type is and your blood type from the questionnaire series. So
You don't actually have to take a piece of some blood.
you
and
don't actually have to have the blood type. They're very advanced now questionnaires, just like clinical nutritional deficiency analysis questionnaires that'll really do a complete profile from all these different questions they can put together. They do that with a metabolic type. Now, the advantage of that is once you know your blood type and your metabolic type, know all that, then you know all these different foods that are ideally for your type of genetics, like type A, northern Germanic type. I mean, that's meat and potatoes, whereas type O and other blood types for Mediterranean, and there's different areas of the world with different blood types where there's different diets that have been for thousands of years that really are ideal. Now, you can eat other stuff, but the expression is one person's food's another person's poison. Well, it's the same thing with different modalities. For different blood types, and different blood types, just one modality that's good for one blood type isn't as good sometimes for other blood types. And this is what they'll find out with the system, that the more people using it and the more results come back in the system, the more it becomes self-evident for your unique, and again, you're special, everyone's special in their own way with all their different genetics, metabolic blood type, symptoms, health conditions. And again, different genetic types would have more commonly different health symptoms. Different health symptoms people have is because maybe from their family line, genetically, they've got some different pattern. In any regard, when you can discover that for yourself, I really respect this buyer beware kind of a thing. You know, how do you test this out? How do you check it out? And before you do anything, of course, in the system, and choose a health protocol with diet, nutrition, supplements, Infinity 8 or whatever, you get to choose between what looks like, you know, it's you're making a choice.
There'll be information there on others and their victories. And dealing with their health crises and issues.
What works.
So there'll be data based on how many people have tried this and what their results have been. Just like now you go on the internet and see, you know, through blogs, all the feedback from all kinds of people.
That's exactly right. And of course, how to structure it. So you get qualified results from people that, you know, they're individuals or families. And again, there's a way to do self-assessment profiles, personal profile, and keep it private data, and yet share the data points without getting into anyone personal, but the data points, the information that indicates what's working best. It's a choice. It's a free will choice.
So you're really taking what the medical establishment kind of keeps to themselves now.
That's right.
And making it more universally
universal self-care.
Universally accessible.
Accessible, yeah.
So that people can really do a lot of the research on their own. Although this gentleman was saying, you know, earlier, he still would like to have a professional to ask questions, to bounce things off of. How, and you mentioned that you could have people of all different modalities who are aware of this new system, who utilize it in assisting their people. So how are you going to sell this system to it's mainly to the natural type of healers, right?
I keep getting ahead of myself. About 10 years ago, I went to see Mike Hart at Chico Hot Springs about buying that place with an investment group of doctors. And the idea was to, you know, do a leveraged buyout, and basically because doctors coming in to get certified, or corporations that want to become self-insured, you know, rather than work with insurance, they want to be self-insured, and there's a whole thing, it's called preferred provider organizations. Anyway, I had training and all that back in Ohio, and I knew how to set this up, and I went through the whole thing of how we were going to do a leveraged buyout and how that would work, and he was interested in it, but the guy that was sitting beside him was Colin. His name is Cole. His last name.
He's now the owner.
He's now the owner because he got the idea of the leveraged buyout, and that's exactly what he did. He owns the place now. So, you know, that's just the way it works.
So do we have another question? Daniel?
Yeah, here's one of those types of practical questions. Now, I remember Christopher had that idea of buying things over the internet and getting UPS and FedEx to deliver the goodies to your door many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But this idea was ahead of its time. But those with the big money and those with connections like Amazon just ran past you and made really big money. Now, how can you guide this small idea past those who are creating money out of thin air, as Ron Paul would say, and are always seeking to find these ideas, buy them up, and use their money to put them into space?
That's a good question.
Do you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, Daniel is referencing, this was about 16 years ago. It was a network marketing buying club thing with different products and services. And it was some genius that organized it very well. And network marketing had fascinated me. Back at that time, was a way you could own your own life with creating your own business. And it was just an industry that was getting going. And it's kind of roasty toasty. Well, there's pluses and minuses with it. For some people, it's wonderful. It's not for me anymore. But that point of how that's what's happened with the internet and with Amazon, and that's what we're seeing now. That you have these giant corporations where they provide a service and they have specialized services, but most of them they don't. They're more accountable to their shareholders or stockholders than they are to the public. Matter of fact, corporate law states that wherever profits are at stake, the shareholders come before the public. And in the healthcare field, this is the problem with big pharma. It's the same thing. There's 8 big pharma companies that make more profits than all the rest of the Fortune 500 companies, and we're talking about billions. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and they're always trying to, crank up, their drug use. Well, it's kind of hit the wall in the sense that the same problem with the internet and truth telling. That there are so many whistleblowers and there's so much expose that there's really no efficacy for the studies. And with GMOs and with so many things, they're finding out that the information about them being safe is just not true. And that it does more good than harm is just not true in most cases. Actually, because of the toxicity of petrochemical synthetic drugs. They have the toxic side effects, and this is when I talked about there's 15,000 people a month on Medicare alone that they can track the data. The government can track the data in Medicare. They're dying because of doctor-directed medicine, of unneeded surgeries or drugs or whatever. So the medical industrial complex is actually, most people don't realize, it's far bigger than the military industrial complex as far as, there's so many people died, in the Middle East that are veterans, but 15,000 Americans, you never hear about that, a month.
So we have to create a virus, a good virus to go viral of this idea to get out into the mass consciousness in order to change the concept of self-health care. We had one other question here. Yeah.
This is actually related to this topic, and what I'm asking is, have you kind of detected a portal or an ally or insider of the allopathic world that could actually serve as an ally to kind of help you mainstream this?
I want to repeat that.
That's a good question of how I would develop alliances with medical professionals that would support this. And actually, there's a lot of them now that are going state's evidence, so to speak, with the truth from the inside of the medical profession and doing videos. And I post a lot of these videos on my internet online blog on a regular basis. One of them recently, which was specifically about this statistic. This is an individual that lectures all over the country with Wallach, Dr. Wallach, about nutritionally, and he's a I believe a naturopath or a chiropractor himself. But it's the actual statistics from the government themselves that the mainstream media, which is largely owned by the drug companies because their major bread and butter is, how many pharmaceuticals they push on TV. For example, it's like they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them.
Right, Reader's Digest, all the major magazines, all the big ads are pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceutical ads. So, it's kind of the point where, just like the economy of the United States, if you're following the global economics right now, it's doing some big changes. Especially on the internet, because they don't report this on CBS, NBC, or mainstream media.
Well, don't you think that all the unreality and the untruths eventually will fall apart because people are awakening, people are becoming quickened,
and most people are getting their news now on the internet. This last year was the first time where in America most people are getting their news from the internet sources rather than from the mainstream media. And so it's not mainstream media anymore. The TV is no longer mainstream media. The internet has become mainstream media. Yeah. And that shift means that more people are getting the truth about what's going on and that's why there's this resentment and anger about government and the media, and boy, Trump's really playing into that, and he's speaking to it. Not that I'm recommending Trump, for president, but I'm saying is that you're really seeing a dynamic with the elections this year, with a lot of truth telling like we've never seen before,
and also NSA and.
NSA, exactly right.
What's his name in Russia now?
Snowden.
Yeah,
Snowden, and the thing with. We're not getting in the mainstream media what's going on in the Middle East and with Putin and with the new technology. Putin is really, and we're not getting in the mainstream media of how the whole balance of power has shifted in the Middle East because of technology that are extremely advanced technology. That Putin has set up a radar shield and he's controlling.
Okay, we're going to end up politics.
However,
Egypt
is a
there is the most awesome permaculture, organic stuff going on in Egypt that you'd ever believe in.
I didn't even know about that.
They're turning the desert into greenery. Hey, Boyd, do we have any questions from those who may be watching? Okay, we're going to see if any online. Any other questions from the audience here? Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, you were talking about Dr. Spock and his wand and healing, and then I was thinking...
Actually, bones, but that's okay.
Bones, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about a YouTube that I saw the other day about a doctor from Israel who has created a machine, like an MRI machine, and it will actually make just pointing that energy and that frequency onto that spot, it will destroy blood clots any place. It will destroy cancers any place. And so it's not invasive to the body at all. It just points that energy and that frequency to that place and it's completely healed.
This gal is telling that there's actually devices now that do kind of what happened on Star Trek, where it just points the device at a problem in your body and shoots frequency and it takes care of it, right? And, because a lot of these technologies have been suppressed. We know that. However, they're coming out and they can't be held back forever. So, okay, Boyd, do you have no questions from those? Okay, we've got about, another 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Do you want to just kind of sum up your vision, how this is going to work? And, for people that came late, Chris had about a 7-minute introductory video with his vision of the TeLeCare.
Global TeLeCare, what it looks like, and how it's being developed, and how we're doing a crowdfunding project into.
And why we're here today with this first
intro
with a wonderful guest that's coming up in 10 minutes. And that's just the first of many, right?
That's right. And the idea, we're kind of the warm-up act for Dr. Kathy Forty, who's way beyond my capabilities as far as understanding fractals and fractal harmonics. I understand enough, having interviewed her twice on my radio talk show, that she knows what she's talking about. It's like I have enough commensurement with quantum science, and I've done enough articles on quantum reality and quantum healing of different kinds over the years, to where when Kathy came along, I was really ready for it, intrigued with it, excited about it. And I've got her technology here in the back, and Kathy will be talking more about that and her experience in Egypt the last couple of years, and some fascinating stuff. That, of course, Dr. Forty's book is in the back. And by the way, it's usually $17 for the book. People that are here today can get it for $10. And a lot of people actually are here today because they've read her book and they wanted to meet Kathy and hear more about what she's doing. So after we have the potluck, and actually during the potluck, you'll be able to talk with Kathy, and she'll be demonstrating the equipment and the correct way to use the equipment, how to hold the crystals, and how these are laboratory-grown crystals in a special laboratory in the United States. They're perfect quartz crystals grown in laboratories, so there's no imperfections in it. And how this is Atlantean technology. When I say Atlantean technology, that we've heard a lot about healing with crystals in Atlantis and everything, crystal everything, and what the story behind that, and the story from Atlantis to Egypt. Kathy will be going back and forth between, the Atlantis and Egypt, and her slide presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I mean, I'm kind of a fan, and I'd like to think that, Kathy's kind of a superstar in different places and circles around the world as far as healing technology. We're really grateful that she's here today. And like I say, this was just a warm-up act. And what I've been doing, with the Global TeLeCare, I'd like to think that the information technology is at the point now, and it's evolved very quickly, like the Internet has evolved very quickly, with database informatics, and that ability to organize information with pattern recognition, where you can see, conceive, believe, and achieve well-informed choice for whatever health condition you have on a self-care basis, that validates all these different new breakthrough modalities, amazing modalities for healing that are coming out all over the world and coming out on the Internet, including Dr. Forty's Trinfinity 8 technology, and to where it'll become self-evident what's working best for different body types and different health conditions in most cases, where you can then choose the modalities and the ability to validate these new technologies. Then there's all kinds of breakthroughs, new technologies all over the world that are coming out, and including the Trinfinity 8, which is the wonderful thing about the Trinfinity 8. It's not regulated by the FDA, because the FDA doesn't regulate algorithms.
I think we probably should end it here so we have time to transition and get Kathy all set up. So, Chris,
okay.
Thank you for allowing me to interview you, and thank you all for participating, and those online. And we look forward in just a few minutes to Dr. Kathy Forty. So thank you so much all for coming.